Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio, joins us. And my goodness, a bunch of stuff to get to, my friend. Craig Smoke, David Smoke, Paul's out till tomorrow. One, the Big 12 not messing around with an officiating crew and suspended him for a game. And then on top of that, there's teams that just blew a tire and some that kind of flexed their muscles. Let's start with how rare do you ever see the reprimand of an officiating crew? Not very often, and it's never good if you're a part of that crew.
Yeah, and so, this stems from a safety in the Kansas-Missouri game, which, quite frankly, shouldn't have been a safety either. It was such a bad no call that I thought those were SEC officials at Mizzou Stadium. Basically, Jalen Daniels fumbles. The ball is tapped backwards towards the end zone, probably from about 10 yards out by a Mizzou player right in front of the official. It's not something that you can check. There's no instant replay for it, which makes no sense to me, but it happened literally in front of the official. So I can't believe they couldn't see the Mizzou player flip the ball back. A Kansas player falls in the end zone and they call a safety. He should have been down at the 10-yard line, but I digress. And then on the ensuing kickoff, what they refer to as a free kick is really just a kickoff.
Mm-hmm.
So they allowed him to punt, and that is what the Big 12 is reprimanding those officials for. I never understood this. Why do they call it a free kick? Why not just call it a kickoff then? Because they have two options. They can either kick the ball off the tee, or they could drop kick it. But nobody ever drop kicks in football anymore. So I don't really understand why we call it a free kick after a safety anyways.
I've never understood that. And there's also that rule that at times comes into play when you score and you get a free kick to try to kick a field goal. Right? Isn't there? And I don't even know what the scenario is behind that, right. But you can win a game or whatever with a kicking from the 50 or what? Well, it'd be from the 35 uninterrupted.
Yeah, it feels like weekly there are football rules that we don't know or haven't heard about in years that come to the forefront. And I've just always thought it was weird to call a kick after a safety a free kick because I assumed you couldn't punt. But then we saw them do that. It was a 74-yard punt. And so that, essentially is why you punt instead of kick off. However, the funny part about that again is, Mizzou had no trouble, regardless of where the ball was kicked off, from going down the field and scoring on Kansas. And that was a big issue for Kansas on Saturday.
So, Ari, where did you start in your mind after this weekend? Was it with a couple of huge wins, like a Baylor over SMU, Iowa State, or was it with the really ugly losses? Where did you find yourself mostly after Saturday?
Yeah, it was sort of weird, Craig, because the day started off incredibly, with Baylor inexplicably winning that game that they had no business winning. Credit Sawyer Robertson, who has 1,000 yards in 2 games. It's ridiculous and is getting virtually no help from the defense or running game. Mm-hmm. And then, the Iowa State game. So, they start off with a bang. Kansas had a 21-6 lead after the first quarter. So it was starting off, shaping up to be a very good day. And I think with those wins, notwithstanding, the focus is the fact that the Big 12 went 10-5. Of those 5 losses, 2 were expected. I don't know that anybody expected Oklahoma State to lose by 66, but I would say the biggest 2 were 2 Big 12 title contenders losing.
Yep.
The worst loss of the day was Army going to K-State and getting a win there because it's an Army team that had lost Tarleton State. I know they were starting a new quarterback, but that's just a brutal loss for a team that has not looked good in 3 games in K-State. And then Arizona State going on the road. It's a road game in the SEC, which is tough, but a Mississippi State team that was very bad last year. And obviously a team we're very familiar with. A lot of Big 12 and Baylor ties specific with Jeff Lebby and Blake Shapen. Could not believe that Blake Shapen is still playing. What was that?
Crazy.
Was that the Baylor Oklahoma Big 12 title game?
Yes.
With Matt Rule as the coach?
Well, no, that was Charlie Brewer, and then Zeno came in.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So
Zeno's still around though. Zeno's still playing.
Zeno's at A&M.
Yeah. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Is Brewer still playing?
He's done. He's actually done now.
He's coaching, I think, at North Texas. But Zeno's 3rd string at A&M after having a couple of years at UAB where he put up some pretty decent numbers. Man, what a way to go. So go ahead. You have a follow up to that? I was going to ask you.
I think I left feeling after Saturday night. I think I tweeted something like this. I think the race to the bottom is as interesting as the race to the top.
Yeah,
I mean, when you start thinking about like K-State and Oklahoma State in particular after Saturday night, and there's some others like West Virginia obviously is not feeling too great. UCF felt like they felt fantastic in comparison after kind of being the number 16 team there in the first week. But let's dive a little further into one of those two bad. What's going on with K-State, man? Like, what do you think is the issue here? It just feels off. It's felt off the entire time. If you go back to last year with Kleiman and, oh my God, is he going to retire? And then he has to tell everybody like, no, I just got some family stuff going on. And you start looking back all the way to then, and this kind of extends all the way back there, does it not? Of just this weird vibe. How are you guys kind of digesting it and explaining it, and what do you think is going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it's easily the most puzzling topic at the start of Big 12 play, because this was a team that, I mean, I would say predominantly it was probably K-State and Texas Tech were probably the most common teams you heard in reference to a Big 12 championship, and they've looked dreadful in 3 games. I mean, even their win against a middling North Dakota team was not very impressive. I mean, I think it's a couple of things. Number one, I mean, Avery Johnson is constantly in the crosshairs, it appears, of criticisms. He's far down a list of issues. He did have the interception at the end of this game that clinched the loss for them, but it was tipped off Joe Jackson. It wasn't a good throw. I think the most puzzling part of the dynamic with Avery is why isn't he running the ball? And yeah, I mean, it's maddening because we saw him at the end of last season have 3 straight games with at least 10 carries. He's got to be somewhere, in my opinion, between 10 and 15 carries a game. That's a huge part of his arsenal. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about protecting him. They don't want to leave him susceptible to more hits. And I mean, it's like, okay, you protected him and you're 1-2. So yeah. What difference does it make?
That's a good point. Yeah.
And like, I just think in the Army, like Cale Helms, if you didn't know, now you know. I mean, he was an absolute beast in that game. He was starting for Army, making his first career start at K-State, and he just absolutely demolished them on the ground. I mean, 3rd and short, 4th and short, it was automatic. And similar to the Kansas game, Kansas State had was up 13-0 early in the game, looked like they were about to run away with it. And I mean, a big lead on an Army team is like, that's impossible to come back from. And it was like slowly and methodically, Army got back into it. And suddenly you look in the second half and it's like, they're completely imposing their will. So like big picture, Craig, I mean, I think the answer here is like, they're just not like, they're just not winning at the point of attack. And like, there seems to be like a matter of sheer will. Like, will I stop you on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1? And in that game, the answer was no. And in the first 3 weeks, the answer was no, because you look back even at the Iowa State game, but there were certain instances there with the same thing. So it's like, it's this weird dynamic that's hard to put your finger on. But I think that's part of it. Like the short yardage situations that Army was continually capitalizing and demoralizing K-State on at these long sustained drives, they had multiple 13 to 15 play drives in the second half that ate up about 8 minutes of clock. Like those and multiple 4th down conversions in that game because of it. And I just think like that's where like there's K-State teams in the past that just would not allow that to happen. And for whatever reason, this team has talent, but they're just losing at the point of attack.
So on a weekend where Iowa State muscles their way past Iowa, like watching grass grow or paint dry, but I'm not just the style that they play.
A 16-13 smoke, and there's no way to dress up that pig. I mean, 100%.
You take the under on that game if any time that they're playing. Then Baylor comes back with looked like they were dead to rights, down 14 with 8 minutes left. So you had a couple of important wins against other conferences. And then again, as we mentioned, Arizona State gives up the late touchdown. KU blows the lead. They just can't seem to get out of their own way, even when something good happens.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Baylor, what a win. You know, I mean, that game, I don't know how Baylor won that game. I mean, I do, but like there's so many things that had to happen, and every one of those things happened. Think about the kicker missing. They pick up the targeting flag, which may have made the kick at the end of regulation a little bit closer and could have ended the game right there for SMU. Who knows? All I know is, and Dave Aranda with the most obvious comments of the day, what we're doing now is not sustainable. Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say like not stopping anybody and having no running game and basically putting all of it on your quarterback is not sustainable. I would agree. But let's sit here and marvel at what Sawyer Robertson has done. He's basically they're teeing in on him, and he still has like 1,000 yards passing in 2 games. Now, look, I do think their running game picked it up a little bit in the second half, which was good to see. Just kind of reminiscent of TCU last year, where like it was all Josh Hoover. They couldn't run the ball. Towards the end of the year, they started playing better defense, but for the most part, all of TCU season last year was Josh Hoover having to do it all. And to Aranda's point, that's just not sustainable. It's inexcusable for this defense to be that bad. Like, this is the bread and butter for Dave Aranda. This is the reason I picked Baylor to win the Big 12, because the one flaw they had last year was defense, and you figured they would figure that thing out. And I get that there's injuries, but like everybody has injuries. You had an entire offseason to try to build a roster with the money that you have in NIL to go in the portal and try to bring in the right guys in depth in order to make it work. And like, I don't want to hear a week into the season, oh, we lost this guy, and it's like completely derailed our season. Well, that's like, think about this, guys. You play 12 games in the regular season. If you want to win a national championship coming for the Big 12, which seems like an impossible task, you got to play at a 13th game of the Big 12 championship game, because I don't think they're going to get an automatic bid outside of the champion of the Big 12. So that's a 13th game. Quarterfinal game's a 14th game. Semifinals a 15th game. National championship is 16 games. 16 games. It's an NFL schedule, basically. So like the depth needed to win is, I don't want to hear after week one, well, this guy's hurt and it's going to derail our entire season. I get it. Like, Marshall's a good player, but like that, nobody cares. And so I just like, if you're Dave Aranda, get it figured out. Is it too complicated? I don't know what it is, but it's the same thing we saw last year. You had an entire offseason to figure it out. You had an entire offseason to boost your personnel, entire offseason to figure out something that you weren't susceptible to big plays. And here we are 2 weeks in talking about the same thing. Now, look, it would have been nice to have a North Carolina A&T mixed in there to steal a team from UCF or a Weber State, right? Like, Texas Tech is playing nobody in the non-conference. Would have been great if you're Baylor to have a Kent State in there, but this is kind of the way it went. You'll get Samford this weekend, and that will be a game where I'm sure their defense will show up. I mean, Samford is dreadful, so that'll be a 66, 70 point shellacking. But they've got to figure some things out on defense before Big 12 play starts, because it's not sustainable. You're not going to beat teams that way.
Is this rock bottom for Oklahoma State, and should the AD be making phone calls to start preparing for a coaching search?
Yeah, guys, as a Kansas alum, it feels like at the end of last year and now into this season, I'm watching Kansas football for 10 years, which is not where you want to be. Kansas, before Lance Leipold was hired, and I'm sure you guys know what I'm referencing. I mean, for a decade, they were an FCS school playing in the Big 12. The most competitive games that Kansas had in that era was against FCS opponents. And when you lose by 66 points, I don't care how good Oregon is, that is an FCS loss right there for Oklahoma State. Similar dynamic. Like, I get that Hoss Haney was your big offseason acquisition. Zane Flores was a highly recruited 4-star. He's got to be like 3 years in. He's got to probably be ready to play. And if not, then you need to find a better backup. It's just not an excuse to be 2 weeks in and be like, well, injuries have completely derailed our season after going winless in the Big 12 last year. I never thought Mike Gundy would be fired in season, but I mean, I think this last week was a good indication that it might happen. And then there's some reports coming out about the situation with their athletic director, and is Chad Weiberg on his way out after a very short stint after having Mike Holder there for seemingly forever. And then does that bring Ren Baker to his alma mater? Who knows? But I would say, based on what we've seen from Oklahoma State football, all bets are off. And I mean, I get it. Like, Mike Gundy's son took to Instagram and had these, inflammatory things to say. Like, both things can be true. Like, he is a legend. Basically every single 10-win season in the history of Oklahoma State, Gundy was either the quarterback or the coach. But like, we're watching former Oklahoma State players play major roles at other Big 12 schools right now. Their talent is so far behind. To me, it has nothing to do with the results. The results are a product of your lack of recruiting, your lack of ability to keep, your talent together. That's coaching. And in 2025, you can't have that. And again, coming out of last year, I thought, you've got to see what Mike Gundy can bring to the table following a terrible season, but I just don't know how much more of this. Like, this is not a team that is going to win a lot of games. and I mean, from what we've seen so far, I'm not sure they can win a Big 12 game. You go 0-18 to 2 years of the Big 12. That's what Kansas did for a decade. So, that is at this point the closest comp I can come up with to Oklahoma State. It's rock bottom, and with Kansas football, they kept redefining rock bottom in that decade period.
Final thing for you, Ryan Staub named the starter at Colorado this week. There's obviously a lot of storylines ongoing. We can only talk about so much, but that was timely. And I don't know how good Colorado is right now, Ari. I think they're like in the middle with the all still to be determined pack of teams, but nobody could have seen this coming. Ryan Staub starting week 3 over Julian Lewis and Caden Salter, and not due to injury. It's pretty crazy.
Well, and this was something we talked about on the show this morning after Thamel reported it, because when Thamel reports it, that's pretty much means it's going to happen. And then Dion, I think, came out and basically said that hasn't been decided yet. But I mean, if Thamel's reporting it, I'll still stick to Thamel's reporting. It's let's just say it does end up happening. It is, and let's say it does end up happening and he has success and keeps the job. It's one of the most remarkable stories in college football in 2025. I mean, they brought 2 quarterbacks to media days, and neither of them were Ryan Staub.
Yeah, I know.
And for a guy in Dion, he's prime time. He's flash. Look at him on the sideline, the ice. Like, he's all about the flash. He's talking about bringing his Louis before he even got to Colorado. Well, Ryan Staub is not Louis. That's Caden Salter and Julian Lewis. So in many ways, he's like way more of a meat and potatoes, old school coach that I think he gets credit for. But for those of us that cover the league, I think it's obvious that he's definitely got some old school in him. And if Staub ends up being the starter, it's a testament to all the things that coaches preach about. You never thought Dion would be about, quite frankly, which is show up, do your job, don't complain, do the things you're asked to do. And certainly I think from what he showed, on the game on Saturday, I'd like to see more of them. And to your point, Craig, like, this is a big game on Friday night between Houston and Colorado, because both of those teams are sort of middle tier in the Big 12. I'd like to see Connor Wegman against, a more legitimate defense than they've seen so far. So I'm really anxious to see this game. And if it's Ryan Staub versus Connor Wegman, man, it's crazy to think that it wasn't like massive injuries that got us to that point.
I can't wait for there's a couple of those nuggets this weekend with good games. Like you mentioned, one of them. Let's see if K-State's going to be able to go on the road after their terrible start. But I cannot wait for next week with Utah and Tech. Arizona State comes into Waco. There's a couple other games where we start to see at least some of those at the top and see what kind of separation, or is this going to be all the way to the end, probably with 3 or 4 teams near 7-2 or better. It'd be interesting to see that. It starts next week, really.
It will be. And again, just weird how these matchups sort of worked out. Like Tech and Utah are 2 teams that really aren't going to be tested in the non-conference. I mean, Tech probably, Utah played UCLA and beat it by 33. UCLA is probably better than any team that Tech will play in the non-conference. But still, like, these are 2 teams that we think are really good, but have not been tested at all. And so, like, they're ramping up. I mean, compare that to what Baylor has seen in 2 weeks, or what TCU will see when they play, and they play SMU next week. Very similar. So it's just interesting how these things work out in terms of, like, it's not Baylor versus Utah. It's not a tested versus untested team. It's the 2 teams that really haven't seen, the 2 teams we think will be competing towards the top of the conference that haven't seen anybody yet. So I'm really anxious to see that game. You mentioned the Arizona State Baylor game. And yeah, I mean, is this a league that is finally going to have some, teams at the top be more top heavy, or is this, the first track we're seeing towards, once again, a league of parity?
Hey, man, thanks a lot, Ari. Appreciate your time. As always, from Big 12 Radio, Ari Temkin joins us Tuesdays at 3:40.